You're listening to Inside the Techosystem, podcast bringing you fun and insightful topics about tech and ecosystem in Nigeria. My name is Emmanuel, and I'm joined by my co-host Chuka.
Emmanuel, did you just forget our intro? Wow.
I think the reason why it happened is because we're due for a new one. We're due.
No, why? What is wrong with the current intro?
I mean, we have to grow, we have to change stuff.
Word. Word.
Yeah. So in today's episode, we're actually really excited because we are bringing someone that has a very large reputation on this podcast.
Actually,
someone who spiked our listeners. Like when this guy came on the show, our listener count just increased drastically. And I don't know what he was saying.
Honestly, you know what's funny?
Just like
I've
that.
not gone back to listen to that episode, but that episode has one of the most listens on the show for some reason. So this guy is a celebrity on this podcast, and we show him so much respect.
Yeah. So obviously, if you follow the podcast well, you'll likely guess which episode it is. So
Nobody can guess.
Tochukwu Nkemdilim is our guest for this episode. Would you like to introduce yourself again to old listeners and new listeners?
For a second time.
Yeah.
For a second time, and now you're a bigger boy now, so you have to add the bigger boy status. You're not the boy you were on the last episode you came on, which was how many years ago? 2 years ago, yeah.
Wow.
Oh my God, seriously, 2 years.
Yes,
Yeah, 2
that's
years
true.
ago.
This really makes it interesting.
We've
But
probably
after how
not-
many months of sabbatical?
What did you say?
After how many months of sabbatical?
Yeah.
For
For us or for you?
Yeah,
For us, it has
yeah.
been just 1 month this time. Just 1 month.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Tochukwu Nkemdilim. Currently working as a software engineer in Luminovo, specifically doing everything related to like Rust and more emphasis on like backend engineering. Yeah, but I'm really happy to like be on this podcast. The last time, it was really nice. Like, I mean, I even learned a lot, even though I was on like speaking, right? And I'm back to like be here again, with Chika. I'll
Nice. So in case you guys don't know, my name is also Awo, or my nickname is Awo. Yeah, just putting that
Awo
out
where?
there.
Yeah, we established that a lot of
When?
times.
I don't think
Look,
we've
so we're
ever
glad to
done
have
that.
you back here, man. For real. You're the first.
Yeah.
This is not about you. So you're the first person that has been on the podcast and has come back for a second episode. So this is your second time here.
round
Right?
two.
Yeah, round 2, fight. Let's
Yeah.
go. Let's get it. And for people that have come before, if Tux can come back, that means you are not too big. You can also come back.
Exactly.
Stokes
Yeah,
is a big
that's
boy, and he came back.
To see you.
Yeah, that's nice. We obviously cannot continue until we catch up. The first episode was 2020, and this is 2022, and that's like 2 years apart. So let us know what you've been up to past 2 years.
So that's actually like quite an interesting question. So I think last time I was previously working in Kudi, which was like a fintech, doing everything related to like fintech and building like
Kudi is now
integrations.
number, by the way.
Oh yeah, Kudi is not number. I mean, like old habits.
I
take over
have
to-
a question. Please, what inspired that name?
I don't know. Like I mean, I left after like Kudi. I left before the name changed. So like I mean,
We have to
but
bring the CEO to this podcast because I have many questions. Number what exactly?
no. I think for me personally, I don't really know decision. But if I were to give like what I feel might have been the reason, which might not be correct, would be probably because of conflicting names between Kudi and Kuda. Like I personally, whenever I speak with people and I say I work in Kudi, everyone thinks it's Kuda. right? But I mean, it might be wrong. But like, there's nobody who knows Kudi, right? But everybody knows Kuda, and so they just mix up both.
Mm.
Please continue
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
catch up.
Okay, so like, yeah, I was working in Kudi, doing basically building quite a lot of things related to like financial services and reconciliation, chargebacks, all of those kind of fintech um, terminologies and the rest. But like, I mean, I wanted to like try out something new, specifically on Rust. I was really happy like while I was still at Kudi, we started using Rust. And I started writing Rust in Kudi. And I mean, it has always been like my goal to like write Rust like full time and everything. Um, and yeah, so I was like looking for like new opportunities and everything, specifically on Rust. And yeah, I came across like Lenovo, focus on like the electronic space, basically accelerating like that entire like transition. If you are familiar with the electronic space, you would know that there's a lot of existing practices that oftentimes haven't changed for years. Like for example, if you go to like um an EMS factory, right, you would see that some of the software that are running there are still like pretty much old, and they are used to manufacture like more recent like electronic stuff. But like that's because like things don't really change when it just works. So like basically what we've been doing has been building like software to specifically SaaS products to like um enable like that gradual to accelerate that transition basically. Um yeah, and it's been going really good. I've been doing like quite some interesting things. I currently work on the manufacturing team, and emphasis on manufacturing team is that we help like estimate in terms of like time and cost how long it takes like manufacture electronics components. So, for example, let's say company A wants to manufacture a PCB, right? They would often reach out to like another company and like say, or a manufacturing company, in this case, an EMS, and would say, oh, we want to manufacture this. How much will it cost and how long will it take to manufacture this thing? So what I presently do has to like do with that. In terms of like getting like quotations, that process generally takes like 2 weeks, right? But now it takes like you can do it like within like 10 minutes or less. Yeah, so quite interesting things.
Wow, 2 weeks to 10 minutes.
Yeah,
That's
pretty
that's
fast.
that's a lot of optimization.
That's interesting, man.
That's
Yeah.
something you probably want in microservice systems.
I think
So
right now I have like I mean, let's not talk so much about microservices, but I have my perspective about that. Like, I think it is a boss term that I'm not really psyched about it any longer because I've been boss. But I mean, that's story for another time.
uh-uh. Only talks does not buy into the buzz. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. This episode, we're going to be talking about like a topic that it sounds a bit ironic, but hear us out. So we're going to be talking about like the positive side of context switching. Context switching is something that you do when, let's say, you're working on a project, you switch to a different project that is not related. So it means like your brain has to like adjust to the new environment, the new terminologies and new things, right? Most times when people talk about context switching, they're talking about it as a bad thing, as something that happens when you have too many things to do, or something that negatively affects your focus time, or something that affects your productivity. But today we're going to be taking a look at the positive side of context switching, and who better to invite than Tochukwu, who learned Rust while like having a full time job at Kudi, right? And eventually spent more time. I think you spent more time on Rust than any other language, even if you were doing a 95 in other languages. And yeah, eventually that became a stepping stone for the current job he has now. So yes, Tochiko is like the best person to talk about this.
I was very. It's interesting to see when Talks is passionate about something because it feels like that's all he talks about from morning till night. And then if he finds anybody that cares to listen, oh, you're in trouble. Imagine you cough. Imagine you cough and he mistakenly hears Ross. Did you just say Ross? Oh, let me just tell you, this language is insane. You need to know. So yeah, having talk about things I'm passionate about is always makes for a great episode. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. So we're gonna actually start by you like telling us what you think context switching is and what it means to you.
Okay, so like I feel like when like people say context switching, I feel like there are different levels of context switching, to be honest. There's I would say context switching on a short term scale. Like for example, you are working on an important task and someone comes and interrupts you. I would say that is like I don't know the right word to like use, but I would kind of like call it like maybe like short. I don't know. Probably I don't know what name to give it, right? But like there will be that kind of context switching, and there will be a context switching where it's you're done with like important like what you're meant to do, and then you have other things that are also like a strong priority to you, right? So like that's kind of like where I would see like context switching, and not just only just specific to like what you're doing at this time and someone interrupts you. Because I feel like several times when people like mention context switching, that is often what they're referring to, and there's still like other aspects of like context switching that you can like benefit from. I mean, even on the short scale, there are still good benefits of people interrupting you. So yes, to be honest, like there's still good benefits
I
of
think I
people
have a
interrupting.
perfect example for it.
Yeah, because like I don't know about others, but like if I'm with an engineer, right, discover something new, right, and it's like God and he's blown away, and he comes at that point and tries to tell me I could have missed out of that information, and he may never have communicated that to me again, right? As compared to like, so yeah, I feel like there are trade-offs for it. If the benefit of the interruption outweighs the the
Disadvantage.
distraction time, right? Exactly. I mean, I would say it's a really kind of positive context switching.
Mm. That's actually a good way to measure if something is good or not. So it makes sense. Just like when
But
sometimes
how
you have
can
to
you
take
tell?
pain. How can you tell? I think it's usually after the fact. So you have to actually experience it.
Yeah,
that's that's a very good benchmark there.
Yeah, I guess. But I guess like over time, when you've had like multiple instances, you would eventually know. For instance, um, even the argument of I will never, like, let's say if someone doesn't interrupt me, I will never have known about this. Might not really be a good way to, because there's so many things that you will never have known about. As long as you don't know it, you won't know it. Like you will never
You won't
know
know that you did not know
the
it.
exactly. Do you get? But because you now know it, you start making comparison. What if I didn't know it? You know, there
Yeah,
are a lot of things that our parents, for instance, did not know, and it didn't hurt them because they didn't know it. It's just
yeah,
now that we're telling them, you didn't know this thing. It's not paining them that they wish they knew. So that's also
yeah,
something. So it means for context switching, there's like it depends on the size of it or like the duration. How long are you switching for, and what kind of task you're switching for, right?
yeah. And also to like chip in, I don't know. I think people would have noticed this that I and Luke, we are always on contradicting opinions quite a number of times, and like people would see us arguing, right? Oftentimes, I mean, in public WhatsApp group, but like we're really
mm,
close, like inside. But like I feel for me, I really love doing that with Luke. And I mean, if you speak with Luke, you see that Luke is this kind of person that knows a lot, right? And I do that so that I want to see what this guy knows, so that I can learn, right?
Yes,
And like
yes, that's
but
there are many
that's
stats that he
honest.
shows me, and I'm like, oh gosh, I never knew about that. And I go and I read about it, or Luke mentioned this thing, and it's part of what I'm supposed to learn, right? So I love doing that, even though people will look at it as you spend how many hours arguing with Luke, but they don't know that the reason I'm arguing with Luke is because I want to know what Luke knows that I don't know, or what
for
news.
people that don't know Luke, Luke was on this show. He's the what name can we give
Non-technical
him
guy.
now? Yeah, he's a non-technical guy in tech,
I
but
think he's the
yeah,
most generalist person you probably know.
probably.
Like,
Probably with
like.
Dubé.
I think this episode is going to lead us to talk about some psychological stuff, like how the brain learns things. So like there are usually two stages or two states that the brain is learning: active learning and I think diffuse learning, like when you're passive. So context switching, right? In the case where you said you maybe make arguments with Luke, right? Your brain is in the passive state where you are passively getting information, but you think you're not learning, but your brain is actually like getting into the deepest part of your memory to like join things together. So the information you think you don't need today, your brain will need to use it in the future when it's passively learning. So it's really interesting to see play out.
Yeah, that's very, very true. I think sometimes like it's I was speaking with someone, I was like, there are many things that we learn and we forget. And then when we have conversations, you find out that so many of those things come up. And then you might even find out that the more you speak about these things, the more it like gets ingrained in your memory. And the more you will have like deeper understanding of like those concepts. Like, yeah. So I think personally, if you want to like learn something, just frequently break it up in conversations. You will always get interesting insights from other people about it.
I think David suffered in my hands when I was. I think I spent like 2 days out of my holiday at your place. I think
Two
in
days or
September or
1 week.
so. No, like 3 or 4 days.
You're a
No,
comedian. You
it
spent
wasn't up
one
to a
week in
week.
my house.
It
It was
wasn't
up
up
to a
to
week.
a week. I can't remember. I don't think it was up to a week. It was
I
not
think it was up to a
September.
week. You had 2 weeks
It
leave.
was.
You spent 1 week in my house.
I don't think it was up to 1 week.
Okay. If it
Anyways,
wasn't 1 week, then
that's
maybe
not important.
5 or 6 days. It wasn't
Yes,
2 days.
that's not important. Anyways, during that
It
period, I
is though.
was like preparing for I was preparing for interviews, right? So all the concepts I was learning, like system design concepts, like basic programming concepts, I would just start telling Chuka about it, even if I know that maybe he's not interested, but it doesn't matter. I'll just tell him, do you know how images are stored in the computer? I'll just
I
start
do
explaining
now.
it. I'll just start explaining it because I will remember the explanations because there are more interactions I've had with that concept in my brain. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So before we dive in more into the positive sides of context switching, like using your example, let's just put a disclaimer and talk about like the negatives so that people will know that we're not being biased on the positive side. Some of the negative parts of context switching. I'll give examples. You can also give examples and jokes, of course. So an example is context switching is costly in terms of productivity. If you're working on something and you get interrupted, it takes a longer time for you to get back to that thing because your brain like has to settle into that environment. And if you're in the knowledge industry, people that work on creative stuff, like you're not doing a simple task, it means that it's going to take a longer time. So if I'm writing code, right, and I'm fixing a bug or I'm working on a feature, and somebody interrupts me, before I can get back to coding, I'd have to like start loading things back into my memory, like the way a computer does. I start loading all the variable names that I was arguing with my brain to pick. I'll start loading all the context of the problem I'm trying to solve, which will take more time. So yes, context switching in that sense is negative. So you guys can also give more examples.
Yeah, so like I feel like also like you mentioned, I think that's like the major factor or the major like con, right? Where like you kind of like drift away and before like you can like settle and everything. I think another thing also is like um it's kind of like if you're the kind of person who likes to plan out your day, right? Like for example, that's me, right? So like I don't necessarily have like an explicit to-do list of what I'm meant to like do the next day, but like what I always do is like before I like sleep at night or something, I kind of like go think about like all the tasks I was doing the day before, what are things I didn't finish, right? And I plan out in my head what I'm meant to do like the next day. And okay, this is the first story I'll work on. I'm hopeful I can finish this within like 1 hour or 2 hours, right? And then all of this. So I have all these things planned in my head. And the next morning, I start working on those things, right? Mornings are not always like so productive for me because I have meetings in the morning. And before I come out of that talking zone into working zone, it takes a while. So I try to do most of
Do you
my
like meetings?
own.
Who likes
I
meeting?
don't think there's any engineer that like meetings. That likes meetings. Like I mean,
I think engineering managers might like meetings
maybe
because that's all they do.
Wow. You're
No,
throwing
that's
shade
not
at
all they
engineering
do, but like
managers.
most of the guys, see, my engineering manager spends a large amount of time in meetings, and that's because that's his job, right?
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. I mean,
Then
they
I
spend a
think
lot
I
of
also picked up something from what you said, about, so in another negative cause of context switching is you um it teaches your brain a bad habit, right?
time.
Because when
Yeah,
you get interrupted,
yeah.
sometimes you like it. For instance, let's say you're working on a difficult problem, right? And somebody interrupts you. You're like, thank God you've saved me from this anxiety, right? So your brain get used to that vibe of, okay, I need interruption. And that's where you start creating new interruptions for yourself, like picking up your phone or just standing up or start doing something so random that distracts you from the actual work. So that's another thing.
Yeah, true. That's very true. I agree with you. I mean, like with respect to like that, if you're not like really like careful, you find out that things you it will just become like sort of like a nature for you to like just embrace like distractions unconsciously. I mean, there was a point in time I noticed it. So I feel it's very important for like people to like constantly like review their work ethics and like see if like what is taking like a bunch of their time. Like for example, for me, there was a point in time I noticed that, oh gosh, I'm spending like open, so I'm not like so many social media. Like I have very little social media presence, right? But like I open Gmail and LinkedIn a lot, probably more than any other app, right? And and I was like, God,
Are you hearing
this,
this guy?
yeah,
Very on brand. Sounds like Tokes.
yeah,
Sounds
and
like him.
GitHub, yeah.
And
So like
and
I
GitHub, of
opened that,
course.
GitHub is,
yeah,
Tochukwu should be star boy. Because anytime I open my GitHub feed, I say Tochukwu start, Tochukwu start, Tochukwu start.
yeah. Okay, so I think UI style projects, like I mean, that's probably another discussion for another time, right? So
Like a
like I
bookmark.
feel yeah, the more you expose yourself to different projects that people work on and what people do, the more you broaden your horizon of ideas you can generate, basically. So
More
that's why I go
anxiety
on.
you get.
It really depends. No, I don't
This is
think
someone
so.
that
I don't.
opens LinkedIn. So what do you think?
It's true, yeah.
So I feel like it boils down to like your priority, right? Over, I think
Yeah,
in
that's
last episode or so we talked about like information
yeah,
overload. I
overload.
don't know. Yeah. So like you need to know exactly what you want to like work on specifically, right? Like for example, I don't know if you guys use this feature on GitHub stars that allows you to star into categories. So like I have categories for project ideas, categories for compilers, category for all these things. So when I'm starting project, I'm grouping them into all those things so that whenever
Emmanuel,
I
I'm
want to
very
work
sure you
on,
did not know that existed. I'm very
I'm not
sure.
really a star boy. I'm not a
Neither
star
did
boy.
neither did I. I did not know that
is
existed.
it
Thank you so
is
much,
it
Tokes.
stargazer?
I'll look it up.
I said I'm a stargazer. I look at what status. So there's this repo I recently found out. It's called trending repos. So you can select what, like you can say I want to know the trending Kotlin projects of this week. I want to know the trending JavaScript projects, whatever language. So I subscribe to that, and that's because I'm not the guy that goes to GitHub to go and search. I'd rather get notified about something that is happening via email or something. So that's going to help me become a star boy, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one for Starboys. Yeah. So like I mean, so back to like what I was like also like saying as regards like context switching, right? I so I'm kind of like very orderly, like when it comes to like what I'm supposed to do. And so if I come the next day and things that I didn't plan for the night before begin to come up, like for example, someone messages me, hey, the build is down, hey, this is down, or something is down,
that's
like,
that's so
or
common.
all this, yeah, like it just messes up with my brain. I'm like, gosh, no, this is not what I planned today at all. And I noticed at the end of the day, I when I look at what did I do that was tangible, I'm like, I can't place my finger on anything that I did today that was tangible. And at the end of the day, what I now do is because I need to like complete this task that I set out. Sometimes I then work like extra hours when everybody's like offline. So I think for me, that's like one of the major reasons why I kind of like start my major work in the afternoons. Because I mean, I know that, oh, I would,
That's so different.
yeah,
I
I know
can't
that
work in the afternoons.
I prefer afternoons than mornings. Like,
I
I
push my
mean,
meetings to afternoons.
I prefer meetings in the morning because let me just have every meeting and know that all the things that can distract me are done for, and then I start like in the afternoon working till because I know I will work like extra hours, so I start like in the afternoon, and that's okay. So I wouldn't say like extra hours per se because I mean in the mornings I wouldn't be like productive. So from that 5 to like roughly 8, right? It covers up for like the time I would have used in the morning
Morning.
instead, right? So I use that time to like do work because I know nobody will be messaging me at that point in time.
Yeah,
So,
that's
Because you don't work in Nigeria now.
true. But
okay, I
apparently,
know
it's
this
not
is this.
necessarily only a Nigerian thing, though.
I
Although
know, but
it's common with small economies.
any
They are.
opportunity to give the ecosystem small uppercuts, I always take it.
So Tochukwu is going to talk about the pros, and from there we'll now actually jump into Rust. So you have the floor.
Okay, like I mean, for the pros, there are quite a couple of positive things. So like I mentioned earlier, like you have to consider it on a short term scale and on a long term scale. What I mean by long term scale is like probably 1/3 of your day or 2/3 of your day. So for like short time frame, like you're working on something and someone interrupts you and like, hey, I'm working on this problem, right? And the person's like, this is it. And probably you've never solved that type of problem before, right? And you guys begin to like discuss about it, whoever you and the other person begins to like discuss it. And you begin to bounce off ideas and probably it's something you've never solved, right? It's an opportunity for you to learn something new. I love this kind of thing, especially like at work where I love speaking like people from other teams because I mean in your own team you necessarily know what your team does, right? But periodically I try to like ask my colleagues, right? Like, hey, what are you guys working on, right, on your team? And because I mean I want to like know more and all of this kind of thing. So if that was the case for someone else, right, and the person would like to interact with me and try to bring, okay, I'm experiencing this problem on my team, right? And this is exactly what I'm facing. Like someone has done it to me at work, and I really learned a lot from about like things from your own end, right? So I feel at the end of the day, I feel you have to weigh the benefits, right, of the interruption compared to like what you're working on, right? You would have just missed this, and you probably don't know about it again in probably X amount of years when another engineer brings it up, right? Or you can sacrifice like temporary interruption for like temporary interruption that will take roughly an hour, right? And you learn something new. Um, so that's a way to like look at it. But obviously, that doesn't mean you then go and be interrupting all your colleagues and like be saying, "Oh, I want them to learn something new." I mean, everybody wouldn't be happy with it, even though people don't tell you. So but I mean, if you see that it's something that is very interesting that you feel like people can benefit from, I mean, what you can do would be like, I mean, you can just like let the person know. I think a proper way to like do it would be notifying about the interruption beforehand. Like, okay, is when will you be free for like 15 minutes? Right, I have this thing I'm trying to work on, and can we bounce ideas around? It's sort of context switching. It's just that you allow the person then to prioritize things ahead of time, right? For that context switching, right? Okay, yeah.
I'm going to like just confess a little bit here. If we're going to be honest.
That
So like
sounds like
before
someone
entering,
going to be bad.
entering entering into this episode, I actually thought, I should have actually done my research. I apologize, guys. Entering this episode, I actually thought context switching would be more of, oh, you are a CSS guy, and then in the middle of your day, say you run 2 jobs, you have to switch to writing Node.js,
And that's
right?
valid also.
Yeah.
That's valid, right? Okay, but we've
Yes.
not really talked about that
Okay.
aspect of context switching, because in my mind, that's the biggest context switching of them all. Because I remember, even right now, although it's still same JavaScript, but like sometimes I have to shuffle between writing React and writing Vue, and it's not exactly the same um, method of writing. So like when I come to a Vue project, I have to sit down and say, okay, so props go here, and this goes here, and then I have to calm down and say, okay, let's get into it. Or switching from Python, because I actually started as a Python guy. coming to write JS on the back end side for a little while. I didn't really do it that much, just for a little while. And then some things were annoying me. Like, why can't I just write range to give me a bunch of numbers in that range? I couldn't do that. It was so annoying. So I was thinking we'd talk more about context switching in that sense. And I'm sorry this sounds more developer focused, but it's what I'm used to. So I'm very sure other people, other careers can relate to it, and where it's switching from like your complete day job. Like for example, um, Emmanuel mentioned you working full time at Kudi and then doing Rust, learning Rust, and like, doing like how does that what aspects of context switching is that, right? Can you talk a little bit more about it?
Okay, yeah, so I mean that's very valid, right? Like you're working on something, a technology, and then you have to switch between another technology. So personally, one thing I try to do is to know exactly like the scope I will be working on, right? I'll explain what I mean by that. So like for example, I've been writing, I write Rust literally every day. The only language I know that I write by the side is TypeScript, which I haven't written like in probably months or so. So like right now, everything in my head is Rust, and probably I don't write any. I'm a bit rusting like writing other languages, right?
Hey,
That's a good one. That's a good one.
hey.
Oh my gosh, I didn't notice that.
That's a good one. I'm sure you've been waiting to use that for a long time.
But
Congratulations, Stokes.
probably it was in my subconsciousness or something. Yeah. But like you look at all those kind of things and there are different things that you have to work on, right? I think one thing to like do, I think this also something that is important in every engineering team, right? You as probably you're managing a couple of engineers, right? One of the things that you should pay attention to is try not to introduce like too many like technologies into your overall engineering stack. Like I see people do this okay quite a lot, quite a number of times, and people are like after like boss technologies and everything. But many times why do people introduce like these boss technologies? In quotes, they are like to optimize to drain out as to get as much performance as possible. But the question people should like ask themselves is this performance really needed at this point in time? Are we ever going to experience like the real benefit of this performance in the long run? People don't weigh that, right? But I mean, if you're working in a company that already has that, a smart approach to do it will be like scheduling like those kind of tasks that have to do with maybe you're writing React. It's like schedule certain block of hours for each write and then schedule on that block of hour for continuous work in that thing. So I'll give an example. While I was working in Kudi, right? I mean, I write mainly Java, JavaScript, and Rust and Python at work. I did most of those things, but like because like our stories oftentimes might have to be with specific kind of services, right? So for a particular story or something, I might mainly use Java or one specific language for it. And if I need to add like something else into another service, I wouldn't write much code. But outside work, I was writing lots of TypeScript, like for my personal stuff and everything. So um, it because the fact that I was spending block of hours, right, at night writing TypeScript, right, and during the day I was writing more of Java, right. My brain was still fresh with both sides of things, right? But I remember when I now needed to like, okay, before we started writing Rust at work and I needed to write Rust outside work, it took me a bit of time for my brain to like catch up. But I mean, if you're writing these things continuously, like every single day, I feel like your muscle sort of like picked up, right? But when you try to now pick up something else, that's going to be challenging. So I think the tip for me would be like giving blocks of time to certain technologies, right? And um like when another time block again to another technology. So I think that would be a smart way to like go about it. I mean that's what I would do personally.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks for that answer.
Then also in terms of like the context switching, context switching can also be imposed and voluntary. So I think the positive one is the voluntary one, while the imposed one is the negative one. So imposed is you're working on something and then somebody tells you, "Oh, can you help me do this?" That's imposed. It means now you have to like switch. But if it is voluntary, that's when you are in control. Then you can actually like set the block of time that okay, I'm going to do this, do that. Yeah. So in that sense, um, imposed context switching always most times negative.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. Yeah.
So a disclaimer now. We've talked about like context switching in the general sense, and so now we want to like dive deep into Rust. So Rust is a programming language, and it's going to get a little technical. So sit back and relax and enjoy.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
Rust, the language, right? Um, what is it, right? And why? Like, why is it?
Now, why do you
Okay.
Like,
think people need to know about Rust?
yes, what is Rust and what is it about? Like, is it the future? Is it something that is revolutionary? Like, what exactly makes it Rust?
Everything is the future, Emmanuel, in this
The
ecosystem. Everything.
Yeah.
future is the Web 3. So let's talk a bit about your experience with Rust. When were you learning Rust on the side, and how did you envision that okay, eventually this is what I'm going to write full time? And how did you navigate let's say, people tend to spend a lot of time learning something, and they might not be practical with themselves, and then eventually they don't ever use it, right? But in your case, you were able to learn this and also eventually use it as like as something you use in your office or at your work, right? So how did you navigate um the period between learning and actually implementing these things that you learned?
Okay. So I started learning Rust in 2017. Yeah. I was still a student at that time. And funny enough, I
Did you
used
say
to,
2017?
yeah, Rust was still very early.
Ha. Well, Tox is
Uh,
actually my boss, so
no, I'm not. I'm not.
I know Tox. If only I can
No.
touch the hem of your garment.
Ah, no, it's not. No, 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 no. Yeah, so like, I mean, I started writing Rust like in 2017. Like, I used to be a C sharp guy and everything back then. I mean, those golden days of C sharp, right? And yeah, like for me, I I knew like most of what I wanted to do was related to like low level systems like robotics, um, OS, databases, like I knew all those low level things I wanted to. Those are the things that I was really passionate about. So in short, I was passionate about performance, anything to optimize performance, scaling up systems, like running heavy loads on like maybe limited resources, those kind of things, basically, right? And so like I knew that um I what I needed to learn was C plus plus, right? But like the problem was it was broad. I didn't know exactly how to start. I remember before I came to see you, I was trying to learn C plus plus with Turbo C plus plus compiler, but I couldn't figure out how the compiler was working. So I was just writing C sharp, right? And like that whole journey, I had like quite to like assimilate that like entire like C plus. I felt like there were so many things, so much information. I didn't know the right direction to like take. And then I looked by the side and I was like, yeah, there's Rust and there's Go. Those languages were very early stage at that time. People weren't even using it for production systems at all. Right? I was like, Go or Rust, which should I go with? I looked at Go. I remember
Hey, who just
I
should I
looked at
go with?
Go. Yeah.
Emmanuel, let this be the last time. Emmanuel, Emmanuel, let this be the last time you disrupt Stokes on this podcast. Stokes, please go on.
I've just been unconsciously giving punchlines.
No, no, no. Don Jazzy has to reach out to you. They have to sign you. You're a rapper.
Yeah. So like I mean like I was like Go or Ross. I was like to be honest, like, and when I looked at Ross, it was more fitting towards what I wanted to like do like long term, right? Both languages pretty early stage, right? And I was like, I'm going to like learn this Rust. And then like I started, and I remember then when we were in class during, because there was this one of our classes that we had in the labs then, that goes into break time. So I'll just be programming Rust in the class into break time, and during the break period, like I would still be writing Rust till the next class. Yeah, so that's how I started. Then it's not even the Rust book that was here; it was the previous book, and the previous book was so hard, kind of hard to understand. But um, for me, I stuck with it, and another major reason why I stuck with it was because I saw it covering up a lot of my knowledge gap. So I'll explain what I mean. Um, for those who go through computer science, right, like especially like in a system like Nigeria, right? I mean, I was privileged to go to CU, where I would say our computer science classes were um kind of, it gave us like good, a sort of good foundation, right? And but like as I started writing, there's so many things that I was like, that I didn't know, that was like seeing like threads, OS threads, green threads, like memory management, all of these things that all the apps or applications I was building before, like I never thought about any of these things. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm seeing how computers like really work like on a low level, right? And it just made so much sense to me. And then I was like, no, I'm sticking with this thing. So the funny thing was that even some of my exams that I wrote in CU, I used to make references to so many things I read from Ross book. Like I think that operating system class, I was just like those were
The one
things
everybody failed.
I got an A in that course actually.
Oh my
Right.
Of
god,
course.
I
Of
got
course
like
you did.
C also.
Of course Stokes got an A. Of course.
Yeah. So like I mean, like I was just learning all these things, and I started seeing so many of the things they were teaching us like in class making so much sense, right? Like, and I was like, no, actually have to stay with it. I think that was like the major reason I was like really passionate about it. Like even back then in school, like I always like Ross, Ross, Ross. I'm like, everyone's like, why is this guy saying Ross or anything? Like for me, I felt like I saw this was a language that had so much potential. And again, to mention, the reason why I picked up Bros was because I wanted to grow with the community. It was still early stage, so I knew that C++ was already large for me to know everything that happened. But Rust is early stage. If I grow with the language, I would literally know the reason why so many decisions were made. And even now, there are so many decisions that where Rust has reached today. I know the reason why some of those decisions were made because I read through some of those threads and all of those things. And I was there while they discussed all of those things. Like, I mean, that did online, like in terms of like written RFCs and all of that. So I saw that like as an opportunity to like grow. Even the first Rust meetup I went for were just like 14. I was supposed to go for four loop, right? But with Awo and the rest, but I was like, no, I'm going for Rust meetup. And then it was only me that went for the Rust meetup. And that was probably one of the best decisions of my life that I made. Going
You
for that
betrayed your
meetup.
community. You betrayed Follow.
No, like I mean, the Ross was more dear to my heart than any other thing. Right. So um, but it was fun. I went for it. I learned a lot. I didn't. And then I still didn't fully know the language, but like there was this guy I met there, Sheon. Sheon, we still talk like very well, and Sheon Lanlige, and um, he helped. I was there. He was working on this project, building like a web framework in Rust, pretty early stage at that time, and I was. I collaborated with him on that. He did most of the work, obviously, but I mean, I learned a lot, like collaborating with him, doing all these things, and I was still like in school at that point in time. So like, it gave me that platform to like learn the things that school wasn't teaching me. Like I was learning from his language, so that's why like I was really like passionate about like every single thing about it. Yeah, and like over time, like I just find myself like unconsciously like telling people about it because I've seen how much it has helped me become a better engineer. And I remember having a conversation with someone was like, "Oh, you're the only person I know that probably considers like managing memory or this thing is not efficient or this thing." Um, yeah, with Rust and everything. But I mean, I just knew exactly what I wanted. Also for like how I was learning in Kodi. So I was already writing Rust even before Kodi, right? The only thing is that I would say in code I pushed Rust. So I won't say I pushed Rust, but I think I brought up like that conversation of Rust at some point. So I had this talk about using WebAssembly. Um, I gave that talk in Kudi, right? Basically showing how you can use. I think the title of the talk was "Why WebAssembly is Next Generation," right? And actually, I feel people should actually listen to that because I explained a lot of things about like how JavaScript works, how JavaScript interprets the hot part, all of those technical terms, and how JavaScript does optimizations, even though it's not a compiled language. And then I connected every of those things back to WebAssembly, and I did a demo with Rust in WebAssembly, right? Um, and so like I gave that talk, and then I was surprised. Like it was really interesting because like Dorian, which was our director of engineering, like I was really happy because like he brought up like some questions during the talk, right? And going into the next year, I had from my engineering manager at that point that hey, we are going heavy, into Rust uh in this new year, and I was like, oh wow, I'm surprised, right? And surprisingly, we started using Rust, and like we made like it was really really interesting. Like I learned a lot during that period. Like we experimented with a lot of things: Kubernetes APIs, ZeroMQ, building service discovery with ZeroMQ and Kubernetes. Like I've worked on all of those things during my stay in Kudi. It was really really fun. Yeah.
All right, Tokes. Give us a little bit about, tell us a little bit about what I know. Well, you've actually mentioned a number of things, right? But you said them like in past conversation. But what are some major things that you think Rust can be used for, and how do you think people can learn it? Like, how did you start your own journey? I know you did some research and all of that, and you also mentioned the book, right? But like
Yeah.
in your own opinion, what do you think is like the best form of see, if you're trying to get into Rust, this is actually how I would advise you get started, and mention some practical use cases which people can use Rust. Like what is Rust being used for mostly at this point in time?
Okay. I feel that's a really good question. I think what I'll say is most times, especially people who start writing Rust, um, if you have the opportunity to write Rust full time, you see that you improve a lot in it compared to if you're just using it yourself. But the thing is, several times you wouldn't just land a Rust job directly like that, right? And so I think one question also I would also answer would be how do you like learn these things by the side while like you're going through like your day to day job, right? And using all of these resources and everything. So generally, I think the Rust book is like the best book. Um, that probably like explains Rust like very well. That's probably the engineering book that I know that I've almost finished. I don't finish most books, right? Okay, I finished some books, but
All of us, all
engineering
of
books,
us, it's all of us.
yeah.
Who wrote the Rust book?
Steve Klabnik and Caro Nichols, like
Okay, all right, cool. We'll
these
link it in
head,
the show notes.
yeah. And there are like other interesting ones. There's I know there's one currently, Black Hat Rust, for people who are interested in like cybersecurity while using like Rust. Really interesting book. I haven't read it, but like I think I've read like the abstract on all of those kind of things. And like basic intros. And I also follow the guy's blog post every week, and he writes like really interesting things. So like I'm really like looking forward to um actually like reading the book at some point. There are still some other interesting road books. I can't remember the name of it. I think I can't remember the name of it. But I think this is like pretty much popular, and how it talks like about how to like write like I think full stack backend applications like with Rust. So that's also like really really interesting for people to like read if they want to get into
Hmm.
Rust.
I'm
But like
guessing you're kind of like a book guy. You don't really watch videos.
so I disagree. So what I usually do is I watch videos first for concept, right? Okay, like when I started, like I watch videos first for concept, right? And once
Maybe
I
on
get,
YouTube or something.
yeah, exactly. Once I get a general idea of how this thing works, then I go into the book, right? And then read, right? So I'm reading from the point of I have the basic idea of
Folks
how
just
this
dropping
thing
on down. I'm sorry. Said
works.
read, right?
Oh my god, Emmanuel! Oh my god! Oh my! I've warned you. This is the last time I warn you.
Okay.
So please
Yeah.
don't mind him, please. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you mentioned cybersecurity just now. Are there other things you can probably apply it to? Like,
Oh yes,
maybe web development as well. Because
yeah.
that's like the big boy in Nigerian tech ecosystem.
Oh yes, I mean it. So the thing is, I will like it really depends why you want to use it for, like web and everything. Like for example, Luminovo, my company here in Munich, right? Um we use Rust for our backend apps, and we also use Rust for like some other things like um yeah, but like majorly we use Rust for like our backend application, right? And sometimes when people ask, like, or when I'm interviewing some people and like they mention something like, why did you guys go with Rust for like building your backend? But
And
like
like this one is not serious.
no, not really. It's a very good question. It's a very good question. Like, why would you go for a language that has deep learning curve to build your backend, right? I mean, you have to consider hiring the engineers, finding really good engineers for those things, right? But there's something I read one day, and it made so much sense. These guys, they moved to Rust, and they were like, if anybody actually decided to pick Rust on their own, they're most likely very good engineers, because why would
Ah,
you
I'm
actually
going to
like
go and pick. I'm going to go and pick
no,
Rust.
no, 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 no. I'm not being biased. I'm
I
not being
am
biased.
going to
No,
go and pick Rust.
no, stop,
Emmanuel,
stop, stop.
let the man
No,
finish.
like,
Let the man
wait.
finish.
I'm not. I'm no. I'm not. Obviously, I know they're like other like they're good engineers everywhere, but like what the person was trying to like say, if this person actually wanted to pick this, is because of that tinkering nature in this kind of person, right? In this person,
Mm,
and I mean that's what makes engineers like tinkering
mm,
with things, building new things, like trying to see how figure out how things work, right? And it was like many times like they found out that whenever I'll try to look for the account, like share with you. Like you notice that whenever they brought in like this kind of people or you spoke with this kind of people, like they often found out that most of the time they knew way like quite a lot, right? Um, yeah. So like, I mean, you link all of those things like together, and I don't know. I feel for me, like it's kind of like really good. So like, when if people were to like ask that question of why did we go with Rust, one thing I just like try to like explain to them is, I mean, right now there are huge benefits because like our Rust code base is very large, um, and we have like lots of moving parts. And because we're a startup, there are lots of refactorings that we do periodically. I wouldn't say refactorings, but like we need to make some changes to add some features, right? And so Rust allows us because we know that once it compiles, literally it's going to work, right? Except like it's a logic error, and we have like quite a number of good test culture. So I mean, most times if we were to ship out things, we are sure that it really works very well, right? And not to mention that, or in terms of like when it's running, it saves you like quite a number of infrastructure costs because I mean it has very low memory footprint, right? It's not consuming much memory. The binary is very small, and yeah, because there's no GC, it doesn't consume so much memory, etc., etc. Right? So like I try to like explain all of these things to them and like, oh, this is actually one of the reasons why we've been using Rust. The decision was made unconsciously, but it turned out to be a very good decision for our company, right? Um, and
That's that's interesting actually. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
So
So
you mentioned that you guys use like Rust for the backend. Can
mhm.
Rust be used for the front end, like browser side also?
Yes,
That's
yes,
using WebAssembly, right?
yes. Using WebAssembly, I'm a huge fan of WebAssembly. I'm not there yet, right? But in
I'm
my
not there
future,
at all. Eh, I'm a front end guy right now, and I've never played with it. In fact, maybe I don't have the tinkering nature. Engineers out there, forgive me, please. Forgive me. I'm
no,
sorry. I let you
Oh my
down.
god.
no. Like
So
I
so
mean,
when you say a Rust can be used for the front end, so let me just give an instance. How would you create a div in Rust?
Mm.
Are you going to write actual HTML?
okay, yeah. So in Rust, there are like already bindings. Yeah, they're already bindings. So there's something called FFI, foreign function interfaces. So foreign function interfaces allow you to call functions or use values from basically call functions right from another language. Most of the time C, right? And so there's a crate called JSCs and WebCs, right? that allows
I think I've heard of
you
that.
to interact with the DOM, with JavaScript APIs directly from Rust. So the Rust community, the Rust Foundation. I don't know whether I would say Rust Foundation, but like the Rust community has done like a very good job creating those libraries, which we call crates. And so calling into like any JavaScript function is basically a breeze in
So it
Rust.
means Rust. So you're not really writing HTML tags. It's like the way you use so you use HTML the normal way, right?
Yeah.
And then you use the Rust for the JavaScript side of things.
Okay. Yeah. So the way Rust is, there are like some really nice frameworks in Rust that are picking up momentum, right? Which you can use for front end, and you don't necessarily have to even write JS or anything or HTML. Like
Wow.
you can use like the H tags and all of those things directly from like Rust. I mean, it's the same. I think it's the same thing too. So if
The reason what I'm asking is more of like if you're writing Flutter, for instance, Flutter for mobile, you are writing actual Flutter and then it transpiles to Android and iOS version, right?
yeah,
So, but in this case, are you going to write any HTML or is just pure Rust you write and then it converts to H1 tags, divs, and other things by itself?
yeah, it depends on like the framework, but yeah, you write Rust
Do you
syntax
do you
directly.
do you know any of these frameworks off the top of your head so that we could just
I'm not a front end guy to be honest. Like,
we know that now. We know that now.
yeah, I'm not a front end
It's,
guy, but I think the popular one is you. I haven't used it to be honest, right? But
Wow, Tokes, they're just busting head. The
what
popular
did
one
you
is
say?
why?
you, but
What
you
did you
haven't
say?
used it.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
I need to be given an award for detecting these things.
No, no, no. Yeah, you're terrible. You're the worst.
So we've said a lot about Rust, like the usage of Rust as backend systems, low level stuff. Uh, in terms of the tooling for Rust, how mature do you think the tooling, let's say, system for Rust is
Yeah, so I think that's one of the best things of Rust, and I feel that's why many times when people come to Rust, they're like,
better than JavaScript?
"It- "Is it so easy?" So all you basically need, so most of the time, like for example, to install Rust, like just a one-liner script, and it installs it, and you select like the toolchain you want to use, whether nightly, stable, or beta, right? And whichever one that you decide to use, it just installs it, and majorly it installs all the things that you need: Rust docs, Rust std, Rust fmt, Rust clippy, what else? Cargo, right? And just the same way you have like npm, the equivalent in Rust is cargo. And so people already build plugins for cargo. So there's already, so if you want to like format your code base, cargo fmt. If you want to run clippy checks are like style guide, cargo clippy, this thing, you run the command. Everything's with cargo, like it's inbuilt. You don't need any other tool. Like it abstracts everything that you need to like do. What else do you want to do? You want to add a
Hmm.
package, you write cargo add, it adds it. Like you what
Hmm.
you want to
Okay.
do, like it's into like that same um package manager and everything. You like it's just stress free, right? If you and every Rust releases new version every 6 weeks. If you want to update, you now use the original tool that you use, Rustop. You just do Rustop, I think, Rustop update, and it updates
Okay.
like all your different tool chains that you have for you, and you're fine. And it's backward compatible most of the time.
Java left the group chat.
Emmanuel, please, not
And
now.
C++.
Not now. Leave your Java hate aside. This is all built by the community. There's no big tech corporation handling all of this. This is all community work. Is that what you're saying?
So most of what has happened in Rust, right, has been heavily community driven, right? I'm going somewhere. Obviously, like most of the Rust effort started in Mozilla. Like the guys
Okay.
that did like quite a number of like the early
Okay.
foundational things was like Mozilla. So I would say Mozilla like were at the forefront of several of these things. Like from they rewrote their CSS engine called Servo in Rust. Like they did really interesting things like with Rust,
Oh,
even
interesting.
building, working on the language itself. The guys who wrote like the book were working initially at
At
Mozilla. Like
Mozilla.
most of
Nice.
these guys were in Mozilla, right? But now there's now the Rust Foundation, and the Rust Foundation is now comprised of like companies like Google, Amazon, I think Free at Facebook, I think Huawei, and some other companies, right? And these guys fund
Interesting.
like the project, and the community is like growing. But like I really like the way the community is like broken. So they have something called working groups. So each year or after a certain amount of years, they review the working group depending on what they want to work on the language. So like every year there's the Rust survey where they all engineers who are writing Rust, they ask them to feel whether you're even using Rust or you're learning it or this is your first time. So they want to know exactly the pain points of the language. And then
Okay.
they will now draft out a plan for the next year, right, based on the survey response, right, on what they want to do. And then the working groups will now adjust to all of those things. So the working groups, for example, they can have an async working group that's responsible for ensuring that async async support for Rust works very well. It might be probably like 4 years ago or so, there was like the working group for the CLI for improving CLI experience in Rust. There was working group for different things, right? So and these things are managed by community, like people like me and yours, right? That are really interested in like all those kind of things. So it allows people
So,
like right.
Tux, are you saying that Rust is in a place right now where if you want to bet your entire company's future on it, you can go ahead. Like you want to say, look, we're going with Rust, and in the next 15 years, we're going to be Rust people, right? Do you think it's in that spot right now?
Yeah, like I mean, firstly, I've taken that bet. I mean, like I already bank literally every single. I wouldn't say every single thing, but I mean, I don't see myself even writing if I were writing another language, like I mean,
Mm,
full time, like if I were to ever switch, that would be like the major thing I would even prioritize, like anywhere I go. Because I mean,
sure.
this is really what I want to like do and be
Mm,
very good at it, right?
mm, okay.
Obviously, it's not good to like build your career on like a particular language, right? Obviously, but like for me, like whenever I mention Rust, I'm not just talking about it as a language. I'm talking about it as the things that it exposes
As a
you to.
feeling. The things I went.
The things that it exposes you to, right? Like I
Okay,
mentioned, it
okay.
covers a lot of my knowledge gap. Like, for
Yeah.
example, like last 2 months, I was also there was this article I wrote about like memory alignment and all of those kind of things and how values are arranged like in memory and all of that is probably on my
Mm,
top gist, right? And yeah, all of those kind of things, like those things, I'm learning a lot more about like computers because the question I ask myself is, that there's so many engineers. Like if you listen to this podcast on the Metal podcast, right?
mm,
They've stopped in a while, but like they bring in like a lot of guys that were really in the industry, like and build a good number of like this hardware and like things that we're using today, firmwares and all of these things. And you speak with these guys have been in the industry for long. And the question I ask myself is when these guys go, who's going to have the knowledge that these guys have? Because these guys
mm.
literally built everything. Like today I've been watching a video on saga patterns and I discovered that the paper that they wrote for saga patterns was written in 19 something. Saga patterns is basically what allows you like do rollbacks on distributed systems.
Wait,
And this is like
before
19
Oh,
something.
before the web was even like really big.
Exactly. Like if you listen to that podcast, like you would see there are many
Please,
things like
what's the name of the podcast again?
on the
on the
metal,
metal.
yeah, by
Okay,
I
Oxide
we'll
Company.
heard of it before.
would include
Listen
it.
to like many episodes, like and you listen to these guys, like many of these guys, they mention like the engineering problems that they were experiencing, like building all of these things, and like you are impressed, like this was 90s, like and you're like, how did these guys literally we are recycling everything these guys did every single thing that we're doing, most of the things we are doing, these guys already wrote papers on them or experimented with them with even computers that had very little resources. And then the question I ask myself is if these guys actually like go, how many of us, right, have this knowledge? Many people don't because we just only like stick with just building just normal things and don't want to like know how computer works like on a lower
Oh
level.
my God, Tokes, we're trying our best, please.
No, like no, seriously. No, like I feel like we should know how computers work, like on a lower
Mm,
level, and which is like why I would say making a bet on like Rust, right, is
mm,
actually very good, both on like your
mm.
career and everything, because you will learn a lot. One, and
A lot,
secondly,
yeah.
companies are already investing heavily in it. Like there was this report about majority of the I think vulnerabilities. I don't know if it's vulnerabilities that Microsoft experiences, right, are often memory related kind. Is it memory related kind of thing? But can easily could majority of them could have been avoided if they were using language like Rust. And like now
Mm,
you see the Linux projects already considering it, like even in writing kernels and all these things. Rust has already been factored in. Or you want to mention Amazon Firecrackers that they use now to power their serverless framework, or is it Cloudflare that they use Rust to power their own
mm,
serverless framework, and they can put up these things in very minute seconds compared to like other serverless
mm,
frameworks, other serverless like platforms, like, and there's so much potential in like the language. It's solving a very key problem that C and C++ doesn't solve, which is what
yeah.
memory safety, right? Memory safety, and basically allows you to be able to do all of these low level things.
Does it also prevent memory leaks?
Yes,
Obviously.
it
It's not
handles
obvious.
every of these things. It handles
No, with
every of
what
these
Tokes has said now, with what Tokes has said.
Yeah, yeah.
So Tokes, this actually sound, in fact, you have me sold. After this, I am going to go and look for a Rust course to start. Um, but
They said you
apart from
should not
that, what
stop
do you
the
think?
course. Go and buy the
Okay, sorry, I'll buy the book. I'll buy the book. I'll buy the DVD and the book as well. Anyways, so what's the community like in the tech ecosystem, in the Nigerian tech ecosystem? And what do you think it's like if someone was to join the community? Because community is actually very important. Most of the reasons why people quit stuff very early when they start is because there's nobody that is giving them ginger. So in the Nigerian tech ecosystem, what's the community like? Is there a link or a channel, WhatsApp group or something that people can join? Are there meetups
WhatsApp group
and
of
all of that?
programmers.
Yeah. So that's the funny thing. There we have a Rust WhatsApp
So
group.
you guys space Rust squad.
Emmanuel Into.
We have a Rust WhatsApp group, and it's very effective. Like I mean, it's really good. We're like, let me check. We're like probably 100 and something in the group.
You
Yeah,
guys should move to Telegram.
208 participants. No, we've actually discussed at some point.
Oh, you
Yeah.
want to keep
So
it, you want to leave some urchins out. I feel you, man. I feel you.
like I mean, we've been considering like we're going to hit the limit. We are 208 currently, right? People in the
I
group.
think the limit was doubled.
Ah, if that, then that's really nice.
256. Really? I do double, are you sure?
That was ahead. Let me Google it.
Okay. Yeah, but like I mean, there's the Rust community currently, and it's growing. We've had like some in-person meetups and also like online
Yeah, it's now
meetups,
512.
right? And I also forgot to mention there's a Rust newsletter, right, for Nigeria, and it's actually featured on the original Rust news, the This Week in Rust,
Nice.
and
Nice. That's
um it's a monthly newsletter. So like it's really interesting. Like I would say, speaking of momentum, like even down to today, people are active on it, like people asking questions. And I'm really happy because a lot of people are like learning like this thing. And like I'm always excited when people like join the group and like, or like they're here and they're learning a lot. I'm like, yes, exactly. That's what the language is meant to help you do. It's meant to help you learn a lot. Like, and things that you wouldn't necessarily like have learned. Like you get exposed to like these things, right? Because I feel like it's very important for us in the Nigerian community to have this knowledge, because I think I've mentioned this like several times. Like we as a community, which is why I'm not like huge guy about like all the whole Twitter hypes and everything. Because I feel like the guys who actually doing a lot of work actually the most low key guys I've ever met, right? And
Mm, yeah.
and so we need to move from that point of just being consumers. I know yes, people will say we are not consumers, but at least my own standard, we are still consumers, right? Um, we're still heavy consumers. Like until we start building things that other people begin to use, like outside, like we build softwares, we build solutions that other engineering teams use, right? And like imagine it, I'm really happy like things like chakra UI is coming up, right? But like we still need more of those things. Like we need low level things. We need more like people who break the barriers of like computing, like from Nigeria. Right now, most people don't do that. While I was in Kudi, I was privileged to experience that because I saw like some really good tools that we built in house that I felt like if we really open source this tool, right, it would have changed a lot of things, right? Um, but when I was in Kudi, I know one of the major things that influenced like our culture was um I mean, they were engineers, and like these were really, really good engineers, and it shaped a lot of things, which was why we could be able to like do those things. But I wouldn't say Nigeria is like the ecosystem is, like there yet. So we need to like go out and like learn these things, challenging concepts, complex concepts, go out, work for teams that build big stuffs. Like I mean, for example, like currently at work, I've been doing a lot of compiler related tasks, right? And I mean, if I was probably and now I'm kind of like the particular aspect of like the scripting and everything. I mean, I would, in code, I would say like I did lead most of like development and everything, right? And me writing like this language in quotes, it kind of like sets me up to be in that kind of environment. So have been doing this thing like full time. And the goal is so coming from Nigeria, I knew that I was a backend engineer, but I knew that's not what I wanted to like really do long term. Like learning this thing by the side, right? It gradually brings me towards where I want to be as an engineer.
Mm.
I feel like it's really essential for people like in Nigeria to like learn these things. I mean, not everyone's going to write Rust, obviously, but like people should like challenge the status quo. Like, don't just settle with just using this tool. Like, try to know your tool deeper. Try to like even people who write JavaScript. Many people don't know how JavaScript works, like underneath, how the compilation works underneath, and why is JavaScript fast, even though it's a scripting language, and other scripting languages are not fast. People don't really know why the language works that way, right? So people actually have to go down, figure out all of these things, and
This is an idea for a new episode, actually.
Mm, mm, mm.
Thanks a lot, Talks. For real, you're actually right. Because I mean, if people knew some things that deeper than the regular, JavaScript writer or the regular programmer, right? I think it will actually enhance um their work, right? Like, in fact, if they faced some certain bugs, they will need to ask, "Oh my God, why is it not working?" You should know why it's not working because it's not supposed to work, right? So, I mean, it's interesting that you actually bring it up. It's something we should actually discuss one of these days.
yeah, yeah.
So, lastly, well, talked a lot about like Nigeria and how consumers, no, no,
Shading
no,
us
no.
from left and right.
I mean, I'm Nigerian too, so I'm shading myself too.
So, do you think that Nigerian companies should adopt um Rust? Like, we adopt Rust. Is it going to? Do you think it's going to be a good driving force to make the ecosystem generally like much more um knowledgeable in computing?
So I,
Especially
I
at the
don't.
stage that we are at now. Please
Yeah,
take
So,
note that not everybody's a JavaScript person right now.
exactly.
All right. So adopting Rust would mean they will have to find Rust engineers. And, what's your take? How do you think that's going to work in your opinion?
so I mean, it's the same way. Even any team anywhere in any part of the world would consider should we use Rust? And Rust is not ideal for every situation, and it's very important to like know that, right? Um, so you have to weigh the pros and cons and what value does using this language bring to your team. So in Nigeria, I mean, most people who are building startups, right, you want to iterate fast because of like the kind of the way like the ecosystem is, right? So obviously, Rust wouldn't be that kind of it wouldn't for most cases it wouldn't be like a wise decision. Why we're using Rust in Kudi was because of what we were building at that time. We were building like a core finance application and our transaction volume like grew like by how many percent like within a short period of time, and we were hitting like quite a number of bottlenecks, right? And so we knew that we needed to like build this thing again, and we needed to build something that would scale even as we 10x or 20x, right? So that's the reason why we're considering Rust. You get? So I mean, for most cases, like most companies, I wouldn't say that it would be a smart decision to like use Rust. But like I mean,
Mm,
it wouldn't be bad if people try out things in Rust. Like I mean,
mm.
it would help you as an engineer. I feel something that companies should do should be setting like some time apart for engineers to just hack around and build things. I feel a lot of
Mm.
companies don't do that
Most
currently.
Nigerian companies don't have the time for that. All the resources.
So now that's the thing I feel like a lot of people haven't like gotten. Like I feel like one of the things that's going to help us as an ecosystem is we need to build a culture of building challenging things, right? We need to build that culture of not just building products, but building challenging things as engineers. Like, for example, imagine you, even though it's once in a month, right? And you say that this once in a month we are going to um hack and build things, right? That are really like new or something. Like for example, I really enjoy like in Cody that every month we had like this inside our and engineers came and engineers talked about like different things. Like I learned a lot, like how we drove down our infrastructure cost, like me talking about WebAssembly, people talking about interesting things, someone talking about Haskell, like those things helped us as an engineer. It was not every day, right? But I was really happy that they gave that time. You get like learn those things. I feel those things are going to like help us. Like it wouldn't be bad. And also, another thing I'm also looking forward to. I'm looking forward to a deep tech company. What I mean by deep tech is company that is heavily advanced in like technology, like what they're like doing. Like for example, let's assume it's a cloud hosting company, or basically
I
people
have
who
a cloud
build.
hosting company,
Yeah,
Google hosts.
yeah. I mean, yeah, Pogo
No
hosts, but
shade
like
to them though.
nobody hears so much about them, right? But, like, I mean, imagine there are companies like in Nigeria that build all these kind of things that other people use outside, like cloud hosting services. And the internet is a beautiful place. I feel like the internet has provided like such kind of platform for people to like build all these kind of things, irrespective of like location and everything. So
I
I'm
think
really
I think you're talking about the output of a particular process, and I think we, as a country, we can focus on the process. The process of churning out these things is not easy, and it's something we don't even have at all. We're even lucky to be where we are as a tech ecosystem, right? If when we think about like a lot of the output we currently have based on help from outsiders, like from the internet, help from investing, help from
Mm.
trainings and stuff, right? So the process of churning out what you just talked about involves a lot of parts, like having good universities, having an environment that allows us to like that motivates people enough to kind of solve
To
problems.
experiment.
A lot of
Yeah.
yeah.
things are needed in this ingredient, and that's why when somebody actually does it, it's celebrated like it's a very special thing, you know, because it is for someone to be able to still come out with something like that in an environment and lack of process that we currently have. You understand? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it means we
For a
have
country running
a
on
lot of work,
vibes.
a lot of work to do to fix some of those
Yeah.
things. First, turn
Mm-hmm.
from consuming to producing. I mean, Peter Obi
Yeah.
also mentioned, and that's what he wants to do. I'm not saying he votes for
This is not a
anybody, oh,
political
but
podcast. This is not a
I'm just
political
saying.
podcast
But he's
space.
right. But no, but he's right in saying that we need to move from consumption to production, because without production, we eventually all the money that we think we have will eventually finish.
Yeah.
Like,
That,
Anyways,
sorry, just to chip in, but I feel we have to like start. Like I've met some really interesting guys. Like, for example, the Rust community, there's this guy's called Polito Plab, which Sheon and Leke, the guy that ran the first Rust meetup, is doing. And do you know what he does? Like every week, these guys come together and they've been breaking down a lot of blockchain concepts. So if people don't know Sheon and Leke, he's currently a principal engineer at I think composable finance, yeah, composable finance, right?
is that Nigerian?
And yeah, he's Nigerian, Sheon and Leke, right? I don't want
No,
to
the
talk so much
composable
about him.
finance is that a Nigerian company?
No, it's not. It's in Berlin. Yeah, he was formerly at Parity, and Parity built Polkadot. So if you know Polkadot, like the popular crypto, and he did a lot of work on Polkadot and on like this on Substrate, I guess. Yeah, Substrate. And if there's anybody that's really influenced like my engineering journey, I would say it's Sheon, because like I saw this was the guy that embraced the ability of reading things and growing as an engineer. Like I know, like from the time I've known like Sheon and everything, right? Like this guy's really passionate. Like he was the first person that talked. Probably he that hosted like the Ross meetup. He posted on Naira Land. Like, and even then, when we're all learning, this guy was miles ahead, right?
Mm.
And all of these things, like, and he learned several of these things by just reading online and like building things. And I can still keep mentioning guys I know that are building other things. Like the guy that was this simple lang, like this programming language that someone built. He's a Nigerian guy, and like I met really smart guys working on those things. And now there's this other guy, App Cypher, right? That I also
Sounds
like
familiar.
you most likely know him, right? He was previously at Andela also, right? And these guys are building like amazing things that I feel like that challenge the status quo of like engineering. And if there's any common trend I've seen between all of these guys is that they started building difficult things, even though they didn't have the knowledge. For example, how does a programming language work? I'm going to build my own. For example, how does like for example, I don't know, even App Cypher, he has this his WebAssembly, I think runtime that he built, right? And it's really nice, right? Like these guys challenge the status quo and go out and build all these kind of things, even though they don't have knowledge about it. People need to be intentional about building those things. Like for me, like every single time I'm like, the reason why I don't write articles is because I want to write the articles that I want to look up to, right?
Mm.
And I've started like writing those kind of articles, even though I've not like officially publish them like probably like my blog and everything, right? But I don't just want to just write normal articles. I want to write those kind of articles that I see that other engineers
You don't want to write articles that start with 10 things you must do as a.
like no,
Stop throwing shade. Those
I'm
no,
not throwing
articles are
shade now.
equally
I have
important.
articles
Just
like that
no,
so
too.
that
they're important, obviously,
your audience is different.
matters.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously. But like I mean, I'm looking at it at from a an ecosystem that has to step into like the next
Grow.
stage,
That has to
right?
grow.
You
Yeah.
understand?
Exactly.
Like we need to write those kind of articles. We need to go out and study those kind of things and know those.
But I think one way to spearhead it is to magically grow the scale of problems you have in the ecosystem. So as long as a company doesn't have a scaling problem, they will not have scaling solutions. Do you get what I mean?
Hmm.
So we kind of like have like a let's say a glass ceiling of number of customers that we have in Nigerian ecosystem. Like so we are kind of comfortable in not having a billion users, for instance. So until we get to the point where we have at least for scaling problems, until we start having those kind of scale in terms of customers, maybe
Mm.
that we should expand internationally and get more customers from other countries, right? Until we get to those points, it will be really difficult to have more people than just like a few unique guys, becoming like solving difficult problems just on their own. Because if they solve the difficult problems just on their own, right, it's not as useful as when a group of people working together do it. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
It means we need to chase the bigger problems. So solving the actual difficult problems in Nigeria would lead us to actually getting ahead in terms of technology. So yes,
Yeah.
kind of
Necessity
agree.
is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
So
So we've come to the end. Yes, we've come to the end of the episode. Thank you so much to Chukwu. Anytime we come on the podcast, I mean, there's a lot of things to learn, new kind of passions that we get, new fire.
exactly.
So it's really amazing to hear you speak about things that
When
you're
when
passionate
Tochukwu is
about.
on this podcast, he's actually the host. He's the one that hosts it. Us, we just listen. We're the guest. When
I mean,
Tochukwu is on the show, we're the guests. Tochukwu is the host.
No, not the worst. Like I mean, I really enjoyed like this. Like I mean, it was really nice like conversation. Like I mean, seeing everyone's like perspective on like this thing. And yeah, I feel like conversations like these are very, very important. Like people
Mm,
having these conversations like frequently, and
yeah.
so that we can like constantly reassess. Because I mean, it's very easy to like get comfortable with um just the norm, and especially like when you're earning good amount of money, you just like more. How much I go do
Hey,
this?
soft
They
boy.
go, they go, right? But like,
Yeah.
uh, if having this kind of conversations, it constantly reminds us why we're engineers, right? Like,
Yeah.
what makes us engineers is we are excited about problems, and not just any kind of problem, deep problem.
So thank you once again. Um, I mean, I actually don't know what else to say because this episode has been the longest, and I think probably surpassed the last one in terms of number of
Yeah.
listens because this is a really great episode, and it's kind of like
Yeah.
no matter what background you are from, I think you pick a thing or two from the passion that Tochukwu talks with. So yes.
All right. See you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Remember, we release new episodes every other Wednesday, and you can subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. If you would love to connect with us, you can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at insidethetechos, or subscribe to our newsletter and shoot us an email at insidethetechosystem@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners. You can follow the host on Twitter as well, Chuka at Siwadiogu and Emmanuel at Olalua_98. All right, see you in the next one.